Welcome to Stop the Fight, episode 45. And today we're talking Gary Russell Jr. versus Mark Magsayo. Let's go! Did Gary Russell say he was injured? Did you guys see that? He said he'll expound on that a little later. Is he fighting this fight injured? Mr. 31-1, 18 knockout, Gary Russell, biggest waste of talent since Zab Judah. Although I shouldn't even say that because that's a little bit of a disservice to Zab Judah. But a man who is now well into his 30s, who is known as Mr. Once a Year, to be announced as his opponent, those were the jokes earlier on in his career. I don't think all that is justified about Gary. Gary does fight once a year. It's true. You go back and you look at every single fight Gary Russell has had, and let's just go back since the Lomachenko fight. Lomachenko actually happened in 2014. He fought at the tail end in 2014 against Christopher Martin, then once in 2015, once in 2016, once in 2017, once in 2018, once in 19, once in 20, and he missed all of last year. Technically, this is more than a year off. This is almost 2 years off that he's now been, and this is a bit of a waste of a talent with the kind of caliber that we're dealing with, the kind of talent that we're seeing with Gary Russell. Gary Russell, outside of Lomachenko, has looked pretty good. I should say very good. The other fights haven't really been all that competitive with him. Yeah, the Joseph Diaz fights, there were moments for Joseph Diaz, but he easily stopped Kiko Martinez. With the cut, obviously, but it wasn't a competitive fight. He won every single round in that fight before it was stopped in the 5th round. And Kiko Martinez right now is had scored a monster upset. I'm gonna call it monster again. Me and the British fighters, but this is a fighter who, if you look overall on his resume and you look at his talent level, it seems that there's much to be desired. Yes, Joseph Diaz was a good win. Yes, Martinez is a decent win. And yes, now he's fighting 2 undefeated fighters back-to-back in his previous round with Nayam Bayar, and now he's fighting Magsayo. I thought Nayam Bayar wasn't even particularly competitive. I talked about the fight. I think. I did? No, I did. But it wasn't, this is a fighter who should be unified, really, at 126. He should be unified at 126. He should be threatening the 100 and unified. Undisputed, really, at 126, and Lomachenko left. He should be threatening the 130-pound, the super featherweight. But he's not doing any of those things. He's continuously fighting once a year. If you look at the fighters over here, Navarrete, no, he didn't fight him. Leigh Wood, no, he didn't fight him. Mauricio Lara, no, he didn't fight him. Warrington, no, he didn't fight him. Galahad, no, he didn't fight him. So who are these fighters that Gary Russell, is supposed to make a name for himself on? I mean, why hasn't he fought them? Not who are these fighters? We know who these fighters are. But he hasn't fought any of these fighters. So when we look at Gary Russell Jr., you're going to have the Zab Judah dilemma. Although Zab Judah has fought significantly more high-caliber fighters than Gary Russell, probably a higher talent level, but Gary Russell, nonetheless, is a high talent level. He was competitive with Lomachenko. Competitive. No, it was not a particularly close fight, but it was a competitive fight. There were definitely rounds that he won against Lomachenko. I think the draw card was insane. But I do think he won 4 rounds in that fight. I think that 116-112 for Lomachenko was a fair card. It's not any closer. But it was a fair card. 116-112 Lomachenko is nothing to put your head down in shame. This Lomachenko at 126, that's his most natural weight class probably. It's going to take an extraordinarily all-time fighter to beat Lomachenko at 126, 130. Yes, Lomachenko at 135 looks like a beatable man, but he's clearly undersized. significantly undersized. And, you know, so Gary Russell, he's always called out Lomachenko since that point. He believes he'll beat him 99 out of 100 times, and this is the one time he didn't beat him. But you know the way that this doesn't work in boxing. The same way I say about Lomachenko, you can't use the excuse of your shoulder against Teofimo. You can't use an excuse of a down fight. And sometimes you only get that one fight. No one cares what will happen in the other 99 fights because they don't actually happen. You get the one fight, and you lost against Lomachenko. You did well, but you lost convincingly. So here he is, like I said, he's had some pretty good wins. Recently, this is his second undefeated fighter in a row that he's fought. He took Joseph Diaz's O. He did stop Kiko Martinez, who shows that he still has some life. So I think Gary Russell is bordering on the Hall of Very Good. He doesn't make the Hall of Fame, but maybe he makes the Hall of Very Good. The problem is, again, like I said, he just doesn't fight enough. This once a year fighting is just not enough. So, he's fighting. Who's he fighting here? He's fighting our friend Mark Magsayo from the Philippines, a much younger, 26-year-old, taller, 5'6", Orthodox fighter, who's 23-0 with 16 knockouts. His most recent win was a knockout over Julio Sea. Now, of course, the casinos, because obviously we do bets here, and the casinos have Magsayo as a big underdog. Which is reasonable, but given that Gary Russell, I don't think he's playing mind games when he's saying that he got injured. I also don't know why he's revealing that he got injured. Does he want Magsayo to come out and try to burn his gas tank early? And then, this way Gary Russell can then take the latter half of the fight and win a decision, but that's dangerous. Gary Russell has a little bit of a I don't want to say it this way, but he's got a little bit of a Lomachenko issue where he's a little bit smaller than the weight class. It's not as bad as Lomachenko, where he's clearly smaller than the people at 135, but he does seem to be a little bit undersized, Gary Russell, for 126 pounds. And here he's fighting a guy who's going to be an inch and a half bigger than him, a younger fighter, a fighter who will probably have faster, fresher feet without a doubt. And a fighter who, again, we've talked about this, a fighter who has not lost is a fighter who has a certain level of confidence. It's going to take more to discourage such a fighter because he has never been discouraged. And if we look at the casinos, I mean, to say that Magsayo is tempting is an understatement. A plus 300 against a Gary Russell who doesn't have his father in his camp because his father had the mutation, first time ever. A guy who's saying he's injured, a guy who hasn't fought in 2 years, against Magsayo, who's a younger fighter, who's a fresher fighter, fought twice in 2021. No ring rust, taller, probably a little faster on the feet. No, Gary Russell never had really the fastest feet. That was actually a huge difference between Lomachenko. If you actually watch those first 4 rounds in Lomachenko-Gary Russell fight, it's like lightning on the hands. These guys are throwing at such speed that it's really quite something to behold. But you start to see that Lomachenko's feet are significantly just better footwork and faster. The hand speed, maybe Gary Russell edged him a little bit, but I thought the hand speed was quite similar. But the difference is Lomachenko placed his punch better, and his feet were significantly better than Gary Russell's. Gary Russell just could not match Lomachenko's footwork. And so a fighter who's a little bit, he's got a kind of a stationary-ish style, Gary Russell. If you look at his fights, he's not one of these slick movers. He has a high guard often. He has some respectable pop, but not a knockout puncher. So I think, again, this is you're all grown people. You make your own bets. Everyone bets by themselves. They bet for themselves. They bet only with themselves. Another person does not place the bet for you. You place it yourself. So none of this is financial advice. Of course, this is just what I'm probably doing. I think Magsayo is a very live underdog. I think the plus 300, especially after the trainer change and the corner change, I should say, and the injury admission, I think is a very much live dog, and I think plus 300 was absurd. I actually think the odds should have probably dropped to maybe like a plus 175, something like that, maybe even down to plus 200 to offset the fact that Gary Russell's openly talking about injury. And, I was actually worried about that. The second I heard that, I went to place the bet right away. when I saw the plus 300. So I think, guys, I don't even care about the over under, but if you do want to know, the over in this fight is a minus 230 and the under at 10.5. And the under is a plus 190. I actually even think the plus 190 is a very reasonable bet at 10.5. Guys, remember, 10.5 means in at 1 minute and 30 seconds in the 11th round. If Gary Russell's injured in any sort of way, I cannot imagine him making 12 rounds. Either he tries to go for broke and gets the stoppage, or he is himself stopped because, well, he is injured. In this case, I want to say that the under 10.5 with Magsayo to win outright is the play here for me. For me. You guys, I'm not telling you to bet. Don't bet. Hell, betting is you lose in the long run anyway, I think, probably, right? We all have our streaks. Sometimes it's good, and it's all sunshine and rainbows, and sometimes you get a draw or something absurd in the outcome. And the casinos for a reason. They're not giving away free money unless you're the promotion at Caesars in New York City. So again, I'm not even taking the under. I'm going straight Magsayo. I believe every now and then you do have to, as they say, risk it and gamble. This is a gamble, guys. This is a gamble. Magsayo a plus 300 for me. And that is that. Again, just what I'm doing. Let's talk about this past weekend's fight. Let's talk about Joe Smith Jr. versus Steve Gifford. Now, for those who bet in a similar fashion that I bet, we are happy. We took the under. The over 5.5 with the underdog to win, Steve Gifford at plus 700. Now, Gifford, for me, it was early enough evident that Gifford was not going to win the fight. By the third round, it was quite evident that he just did not have, he was landing a lot of jabs, Gifford. He was on Joe Smith Jr., but that's not enough to assuage, our powerful Joe Smith Jr. It didn't matter that Gifford was taller, or that, he wasn't even moving particularly better. He wasn't really faster. Just landing jabs on Joe Smith is not going to assuage him, and he's going to keep coming forward, and that's what he did. I was right. The fresh Gifford was able to weather the storm. But Joe Smith is a bit on the, he's on the slower side. This isn't a knock on Joe Smith. It just is. That's just the case. He's on the slower side, and Joe Smith was dragging his feet a little bit after Gifford, which is exactly why we took the over. I was happy. Of course, he wound up getting the stoppage in the 9th round. Joe Smith has showed that he's learned to throw the shots at open portions of the body and the arms. He kept coming. I think Gifford just couldn't even keep his arms up at the end. I knew that after 5.5, this fight wasn't going the distance. I knew Joe was going to pick up that stoppage. Gifford had nothing for him. He just couldn't do it. Joe was way too strong on Gifford. But Gifford did put up a valiant effort, of course. Fighting into the 9th, I thought the fight could have been stopped maybe a round earlier, 2 rounds earlier, maybe in the 7th. It would have been reasonable to stop the fight simply because it did not seem that Gifford can do anything to stop him. He did not have the pop. You have to be able to hurt Joe, and he made him uncomfortable at points, but uncomfortable for Joe is that ain't gonna do it. He has to, a 32-year-old has to be hurt from Long Island. So again, congratulations to us, anyone who took the over 5.5. We got pretty much 2 times your money. Obviously, you lose if you took my bet. You lose on the what do you call it? The underdog. But I told you you're gonna get about 50% return depending on how you bet, how you structured your bet. That's not bad. You bet 200, you win 100. You bet 500, you win 250. That's really not that bad at all, considering I thought this outcome was quite easy to see. And anytime you kind of have a fighter who's going to be a little bit bigger than Joe, who's a fresh fighter, who is a fighter who is not a knockout artist, but probably going to work behind the jab, I think it's safe to take some of these shorter over-unders. See, because Joe's going to get the stoppage, but if you notice the stoppages, they really do occur a little bit later in the fight. Let's just take a look at the last few stoppages he's had. Gifford in the 9th, Alvarez in the 9th. He got, obviously, Melvin Russell in the 1st. But Bernard Hopkins in the 8th, and before then it was just he was basically fighting, you know, his first real name opponent was Fonfara, which he got out in the 1st. But against these more high level guys, I believe it's all going to be in the mid round. So in his past 5 or 6 stoppages, only one has occurred before the middle rounds. So if you're getting 5, 5.5, even maybe 6.5 rounds, you're safe in taking the over, unless of course you're dealing with a very chinny fighter. But like I said, this one was pretty easy to see. Sometimes boxing just gives you things that seem evident and even more self-evident when they occur. And this was one of those times. Well, all right, guys. This is going to be a shorter episode. That's going to do it for me. Thank you all for, listening in. Again, if you believe the bet's going to come out differently, why don't you let me know? Comment below, like the video, share the video. I got an Instagram going now. I'll mention some of the bets over there as well. So, let's have fun with this. Let's make some money, right? All right, it's over.